Assalamu alaikum. This is Mubaraka, and I am here to figure that I would cook a little brunch and chat with you for a little bit. Well, it's a little bit past brunch. It's like dinner. It's like after lunch, but closer to dinner time. So today I am going to make some bone broth vegetable soup. So a couple of weeks ago, I came live and I showed you guys how I make my bone broth. Well, the bone broth was made. I froze it in 2 cups portions inside of Ziploc bags. And this is some of the things that I do with it. You can use your bone broth. So some of the questions that people had was, okay, how do you consume it after you've made it? So some of the ways in which you can consume it is you can add it as the liquid to your rice, you can add it to your stir fries, you can use it as a soup by itself, or you can add other things to it. So today I feel like I need to stack my veggies. So I'm going to first turn on my pot. That's the first thing I'm going to do. So I am going to, my pot is about to lower. I gotta prop my pot. Hold on. So I'm gonna make some vegetable soup with my bone broth. So what does that mean? That means that eat more vegetables. You don't have to be extreme and go vegan. Just eat more vegetables. Vegetables are good for you. They give you lots of nutrients. They have minimum amount of sugar. So I'm going to see if I can show you what I have. So I have my bone broth. I have let me see if I can turn my camera around. Hold on. So I have mushrooms. I have zucchini or green squash. I have onions, yellow squash. This is grated fresh turmeric, and this is garlic. And of course I have my bone broth, and I have some extra water. So I am obsessed with making everything that I can from a base of onions, garlic, and turmeric. And that's really kind of like, and I'm going to start off with some avocado oil. So I'm going to pour in a little avocado oil. Well, that's kind of a lot of avocado oil because I like good fat. And the first thing that I'm actually going to put in is I'm going to put in my onions. So, if you know anything about cooking, onions always go first. You always want them to become translucent and get some a little bit of cooking done so that they can start releasing some aromatics. I'm going to bring my camera closer while you constantly saying it's live, so I'm still getting stuff. So I always I chop the onions up small, because remember, I'm making a soup, and I'm not making onion soup, so I don't want my onions to be like super huge. I want them to be really small, and I want them to cook down so that by the time they're in the soup, I can't even tell that they're there, right? So onions is like one of my base things. One is because if you have been watching my lives, you would know that they are one of our AI fat burning foods, our angiogenesis inhibiting. So now I'm actually going to grab my garlic. So here's the really cool thing about garlic and why cooking for health is really knowing little teeny tricks, right? So when you are cooking with garlic, when you're cooking with fresh garlic, actually, you want to always crush your garlic first. No matter how many vegetables you have to cut up, always crush your garlic first and leave it for 5 minutes, because even before you chop it up, because it actually, crushing it actually activates the enzymes in the garlic, right? So you want to crush it, you want to leave it. Normally I crush it first, leave it, cut everything up, and then come back and crush up the garlic. All right, so I have my onions, I have my garlic, and then I'm going to add my turmeric. Now, fresh turmeric change the game. If you using dry turmeric, I don't even know what you're doing. Once I start using fresh turmeric, I was like, dry turmeric, who is you? Like, I don't even know who you are. Fresh turmeric has so much more flavor. Oh my gosh. Like, you see, I have a thing of dry turmeric. You see how full it is? It's great facial stuff. And it gives me color for my food. But fresh turmeric is always the way to go. So I have cooked this down a little bit. You can see that. I don't know if you can see that. Right, so I've cooked that down a little bit. And now I'm going to add my veggies to it. So remember, veggies don't have to be really cooked that much. So the first veggie, you always start from the thickest, right? The thickest veggie. I'm going to add some baby bell mushrooms. Mushrooms is one of those things that I had to actually grow to like. When I was younger, I really did not like mushrooms at all. So I'm going to actually add my mushrooms first. I'm going to let that cook down just a tad bit. Just a few stirs. Right? Okay, I'm going to pick up my mushrooms from my pile too. One of the things that I love about making a vegetable soup from bone broth is that it is so incredibly flavorful. All right, now let's add our zucchini. And I did not make these really big, so my zucchini is like, I don't know, what is that, a 1/4 inch thick? Because again, one, I don't want it to cook for a super long time. I'm not trying to make a stew. I want to make something that I can eat today, that we can eat with our dinner, even though I'm sure I will eat it before my family gets home. So for dinner today, we are having, this is not, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I do not cook a lot. Alhamdulillah, I have a husband that cooks very well, and he also enjoys cooking. So most days of the week, my husband actually cooks dinner. But sometimes I feel like really getting in the kitchen and making, when I do cook, I cook with intention, meaning like I need these nutrients in my body and I'm going to go cook them, right? Because my husband kind of like cooks, he cooks by taste. Okay? And the intention on what is the healthiest thing to put inside something is not always there. He doesn't cook extremely unhealthy, but he definitely cooks for taste. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add to this. So first I'm going to add some garlic powder. I'm going to be honest with you. When it comes to adding seasonings, I really do add them only for the flavor. I don't feel like the dried garlic powder that's been sitting on the store shelf for 6 months after it was inside of the storage facility for 6 months is really giving me that many health benefit nutrients. Different from fresh. I'm also going to add some, I wanted to add some onion powder, but now I gotta look at it. Ah, there it is. Onion powder. Alright. And I'm not going to add salt just yet. I am going to add salt. But the reason why, so this is my frozen bone broth that I made last week. And I'm going to actually just add it just like this, frozen inside of from the bag. see the gelatinous of it. Okay. Come out the bag. Alright, so that is actually going to melt down. Frozen bone broth added. And I'm actually going to also add some water to that, which is going to give me a whole big pot of delicious vegetable bone broth. You want to see my vegetable bone broth soup? So the broth, big old chunk of frozen bone broth, will melt. It will melt down. One of the things that I like doing is making sure that I don't add the salt to the end. So when you add salt while you're cooking, the saltiness of the salt decreases in the cooking, but the sodium stays. And then after you're done cooking, or you're at the end of your cooking, you're like, oh, I think I need more salt. But you're adding more salt to the taste. So it's better to add your salt towards the end of your cooking process or after it is done, so that you aren't doubling up on the sodium that is inside of your food. Because remember, the salty taste will diminish, but the sodium is still there. So I normally add salt like towards the end. So this is probably going to cook for it's done when the vegetables are soft enough for my soup and the bone broth is defrosted and incorporated into the water. So some of the benefits of bone broth in particular, the reason why I have it, so there's lots of benefits. I mean, it's like a part of the GAP diet. It helps heal your gut if you have leaky gut syndrome, all these other things. The reason why that I personally enjoy bone broth and the benefits that I look forward to is the fact that, one, it's very soothing for the gut. Number two, it has a lot of electrolytes, which is something that I'm conscious of as I follow a ketogenic diet, right? So it has potassium and magnesium, and it has sodium, and it has calcium. All of that is inside of the bone broth. When you are doing intermittent fasting, be it for a short period of time or especially for an extended fast. Next week, I have on my calendar to come here and talk to you about doing extended fasts and how long and what's the benefits. Should you do a 3-day fast, a 7-day fast, a 10-day fast? So make sure that you subscribe to these lives, because I'm going to be coming on to talk about fasting and its benefits. But for today's purpose, one of the benefits of bone broth is when we are fasting, particularly when you do an extended fast. So like some days I will do a 20-hour fast, right? When your stomach is empty of food, then the acidity in your stomach builds up and it can thin the stomach lining, right? And so bone broth is gelatinous, right? It has gelatin in it. It soothes and repairs that stomach lining. This is also really good for people who have acid reflux, and if you have gut or digestive issues. It's probiotic. I mean, there's so many benefits. Bone broth is something that has been passed down for generations to generations. It has become popular in the last, 5 years or so again, but it's literally hundreds of years old. And it can be made, it's called bone broth, but it can be made from any bone that is not just, if you think of kind of like, a T-bone steak, not just a T-bone. It could be made from chicken feet, which I have. My next batch, I'm gonna make it exclusively from chicken feet. It could be made from lamb bones, any animal bones. It can even be made from fish bones, because the goal of the bone broth is actually to cook the broth long enough so that it actually pulls out the marrow from the center of the bone. So a conversation that I was having in my group the other day was, hey, can I, throw some meat inside of a pot and boil that and use that for bone broth? It will be broth, but it's not bone broth, right? And if you only cook, even if you put in the bones in it and you only cook it for 2 hours, it's still not bone broth. Because the point of bone broth, the reason why it takes so long to cook is because it takes time for the water to break down the bone so that it gets and pulls out what's inside of the marrow. So if you're cooking it for a short amount of time, you're not getting the benefits of all of the nutrients that's inside of the marrow, the center of the bone itself. I know when my bone broth is done, generally we don't eat that much red meat outside of hunting season, because if you follow me at all, you know that in the wintertime my husband hunts and he harvests deer, and then we eat much more red meat then, right? So, but because we don't eat a lot of red meat, generally I make a lot of my broths from chicken. And the way that I know that the broth is done, I was teaching my daughter along as we were doing it. And what I did was I took a bone out of the pot. And if I can break it with my fingers, then I know that it's done. I'm literally trying to get the bone, so much marrow out the center of the bone that I could break it with my fingers, right? Generally, you can't break a chicken bone with your hand in the middle of the bone. At the joint, you can pull them apart, but generally you can't do that in the middle of a leg bone or even a neck bone, right? So the goal for your broth is, one, for the bones to be so cooked and the marrow be taken, so much marrow taken out that you can actually break the bone with your hand. And number two, when it cools, that it becomes thick and gelatinous, right? So that's how you know, like, okay, this is the consistency that I want my bone broth. I think oh, look at that. Just talking for you for like 10 minutes, all of my broth is melted. And I have soup just like that. So I'm actually going to I'm actually going to cook this down. You see that yellowness is from the turmeric that I added to it. I'm actually going to cook this down for probably about 20 minutes. Right now it's too soupy, so I want it to be a little bit thicker than that. So what are you having for dinner tonight? I am having bone broth vegetable soup. I'm going to make some salmon, and I'm going to make a salad. So that's another reason why I actually did not add any tomatoes to my bone broth soup, which I was thinking about doing. I would normally do, but I decided not to because I'm actually going to have tomatoes inside of my salad. So I am doing a double veggie night. Let me know what you're having for dinner, what veggie you're having. I'm doing a veggie check-in, and I'm always doing veggie check-ins because people need to eat more vegetables, right? There's so many health benefits, particularly leafy greens. High blood pressure, eat leafy greens. High cholesterol, eat leafy greens. Not lettuce, I'm talking about cook dark leafy greens. If you take nothing from my page and you're like, I just need to remember one thing that Mubaraka said, that would be eat cooked greens every single day. Okay? So, inshallah, I will talk to you tomorrow. Like, share, subscribe to my lives, because I'm going to be coming on my notepad. I have to talk to you about intermittent fasting, to talk to you about fat burning foods, to talk to you about changing the narrative of who you want to be and who you want to become, and how do we do that, and how do we got mindset stuff to talk about. All right, so until next time, I'll talk to you soon. Assalamu alaikum.